Welcome, everyone. I am Jessica Johnson. This is June A. Hayward Kopka, and Armin Tolentino is right here. We'd like to welcome you to the 25th Constellation. We are so happy to bring together these readers, Sangi Lama, Astra Lincoln, and Jenny Chi. And we are happy to bring together all of you, this audience and this room, and those of us who are joining via live stream. Constellation is a lot about who gathers here as well as who is reading here, so thank you for being here. As we gather in this space, it's important to acknowledge that we are gathering during a time of struggle and violence against many peoples. The Palestinian people continue to be brutalized by the decades-long American-funded genocide and colonial violence of Israeli apartheid. We also stand in solidarity with victims of genocide in Sudan and Congo, and with the indigenous peoples, the Multnomah, Kathlamet, Clackamas, Tumwater, and Watlala Cascade bands of the Chinook, as well as the Tualat and Kalapuya, and many other recognized and unrecognized indigenous nations of the Columbia River, on whose unceded traditional homelands we are gathered right now. This is a place in which many promises have not been kept, and we acknowledge our responsibility to work in material ways toward land rematriation, so land back. Woo. We stand firmly against anti-Blackness and recognize that police violence and all white supremacist violence must be named and opposed. We stand with immigrants, against whom the current federal administration is carrying out horrifying acts of violence, imprisonment, and erasure. These forms of violence, along with transphobic violence being legislated across the United States, endanger the lives of trans, queer, gender nonconforming, and non-binary people. Therefore, as we begin our event, we wish to underscore that none of us are free until all of us are free. And that all anti-racist, liberationist, and decolonial struggles are intertwined. We adopted this statement from the Radius of Arab American Writers, and we thank them for their labor and ongoing activism. And we say all of this with the intention to make good use of this time together. Before we get started, we want to thank Lance Cleland of Tin House and Melissa Amstutz of Bishop and Wild for their generosity in opening this space to us. We want to thank each of you for honoring our COVID policy and looking out for each other, which is masks down here, masks optional upstairs. This allows more people to attend, and it's important for us. And you may be here because you know one of the readers, or you know one of us. For how many of you is this the first time at Constellation? All right, yes. Welcome to your space. We hope you come back. We are usually here on the second Thursday of each month, but not always. Next month in particular, we have a variance, and we'll be here on June 26th for a really exciting reading. So watch out for that variation if you'd like to come back. I know we also have some regulars here in the room who we always love, love, love to see. And we have a special thing that we're doing tonight.
Oh, we're going to do something weird, and I'm sorry, and I've been thinking about it.
Are we going to do it?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, Junae wants to do something, and it's going to be great. Here you go.
It's kind of funny that we're doing, I'm going to facilitate a group building activity. Like,
Yeah.
I know that sounds weird, and if I were you guys, I'd be like, ew. Gross. It's kind of funny that it's sort of teacherly, and we've got PCC folks, and Jessica and I met at PCC, and so this is sort of, I was realizing like, oh my God, this is such a teacher thing, even though I'm not a teacher anymore. So Jessica just listed some of the really fucking terrible things happening in the world right now. You know, this is Constellation. Our community is usually very, very, very aware of all those things and often targets of oppression. I don't want to continue to list all of those things. I want to say Constellation is not an organizing space either. We are an art space and we are a community space. But we wanted to do something a little bit different tonight because the world is a little bit on fire. And maybe we'll do something like this again, maybe not. This is not a regular thing. But we're hearing a lot of people talk about feeling helpless and feeling like they don't know what to do. And so we wanted to do like a 10 to 15 minute thing around liberation movement roles and what we are already doing or what we might want to step into and do. We also believe in the power of community. So this is just as much a community space as it is like a literary space. And we believe that one of the main things that keeps us safe is each other. And so we wanted to facilitate something so we can kind of get to know each other a little bit more. Sorry for the introverts in the room. We're not going to do like an end of like activity group report out. It's not going to be that bad. But we wanted to offer you a few frameworks for thinking about what you're already doing in community toward liberation and justice, or what you could potentially lean into a little bit more. Some of you have probably seen these frameworks around. Maybe you use them in the work you do. I know a lot of you are very active in your various communities. I love these because these frameworks help me realize that I don't have to do all the things. I feel a lot, I grew up Catholic, thanks Mom and Dad. I often feel a lot of guilt that like, oh, I should be doing more, I should be out there with bricks smashing windows. Like, I'm not like a brick thrower. These frameworks help me realize like I am doing the things that I'm good at and skilled at, and that's enough, and other people will fill in the other roles because they're good at those things too. So like a teacher, I have some handouts. You don't have to keep these. I will reuse them or recycle them for you, but let's have some. There are two. So I'll start some on this side. Start some on this side. And then this one I didn't mean to print them out so big, but it happened. We've got So there are two pieces of paper and three frameworks. One is composting in a dying world. Another one is just a small one by A.J. Hawkins. Another one is just a small little 4 rectangle framework by Daniel Hunter. And on the big sheet of paper is my favorite one I've been using for a few years, a social justice ecosystem map. And so take just a few minutes to just skim and look this over. And here are some questions to consider while you're looking at this. So is there a particular role or multiple roles that resonate with you? Conversely, are there roles on there that you know you don't want to or can't fill? Is there a role you'd like to explore? Are you stuck in a role that you're like, I need to get out of this because it actually doesn't fit and doesn't feel good? Is there anything missing? Are there other ways to think about it? So just do a little reading and reflection for just a couple minutes, and then we'll do the next step. Do you need a little more time? Okay. So now is the community building time. We'd love for you to meet somebody new. If possible, if it's too awkward to like turn around or whatever, just talk to the person you already know next to you, that's fine too. But ideally, meet someone new, exchange names, pronouns, and then say just like what stood out to you. Is there one that really like resonates with you? Is there something that you feel like is missing? Whatever, just something about what's on these handouts to connect with somebody new. And we'll do that just for about five minutes at the most.
Hello.
What's that?
Yeah, I love this super dope too. Like, I feel like it's almost like it's like serious, but I really love it. So like I just don't yeah, it's did, yeah. You were like, you don't say names, pronouns, like small
It was really cool when the room kind of blew up in that community. Okay, let's all come back together.
Yes.
That works. This works.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah. Sarah, yeah.
That was so sweet when like immediately the room just went in talking. I hope it was nice to connect with somebody new. I talked with Emmy and Jenny, and I think one of the things that was really cool in observing the conversation was they didn't just talk about their roles in these things, they talked about the role of poetry, as they're both poets. Like, what is the role of poetry? And so then they talked about like, well, it's like obviously there's storytelling, but then there's like the role of the healer and also the role of like the weaver and like bringing various things together. So I think that, yeah, appreciated that. So we have 3 wonderful authors who are going to help heal and storytell and weave for us. And just super excited to be here. Jessica, you want to? Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for doing that activity. If you don't want these handouts, you can just like put them under your chair and we'll recycle them or reuse them.
It is my great pleasure to welcome Sangi Lama to our Constellation space. Sangi Lama is from Hetauda, Nepal. She's currently at work on a collection of short stories that follows a cast of Nepali individuals as they navigate love, separation, and community. Her writing has been supported by Kundiman Tin House and the Carolyn Moore Writing Residency, where she's in residency right now. She holds an MFA from the University of Pittsburgh, which she just got. Just bend it down. Yeah.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for
Hello.
being here. And thank you to Jessica and June and Arwen for hosting and organizing this wonderful community. I'm very excited to be here. I am going to read 2 short excerpts from 2 of my short stories, and I'm going to get started. The first one is from a short story called Word Cleavers. The tongue has no bone, so it slips. It was why words poured out of our mouths so carelessly, why we needed the cleavers. Before, it used to be different. On Sunday afternoons, we sat on worn cushions, mollified over time in the local Buddhist temple. In our hands, our prayer beads swung softly from our menstruations. We rotated the beads, the infinite loop of prayer we held between our fingers. The monk leading us read from scriptures, rang a bell in time with his low chanting. His voice echoed from the speaker, crackling in the air. He chanted, we whispered. It blended, indistinguishable from what was prayer and what wasn't, all noise that filled our ears. We prayed, we gossiped. It was what our Sundays consisted of, God and each other. It was also where we learned the most about our community. It was there rotating beads, incanting prayers, spreading rumors that we dabbled in the spheres of the gods. Even fates knelt in front of words. They were as potent as any prayer, any summoning, altering lives with their presence. In those moments, we were no different from the deities we worshipped. We were equals. We too could shape lives and fates with our words, that too with a speed that even a higher power could not compete with. See, we recognize gossip by many names: truth, renamings, agency, care. Gossip could be a teacher. When you talked about others, you learned from their mistakes, what you should or shouldn't do. Gossip could be the skin of someone else that transformed you into a version of yourself who was not quite you, but altered. It could revise you into something else, give you a new name. It was sometimes that altered skin and name that was the most devastating, that someone could wield power over something as integral, as intimate as our flesh, our names. But wasn't that freeing too, to sometimes slip out of the name you have always been, out of the skin you have always had, and become someone else entirely? But things like these, when we wielded power that was never ours, became painful reminders when we paid the human prices for them. Because everything had a cost. Gossip had a price, and words had to be cut. Then one day, Kurakatne arrived, a store for gossip. The three women at Kurakatne were cleavers of many things: people and relationships, hearts, but mainly our words. They sliced into the flesh of words with bladed instruments. They cut into the elastic cartilage of consonants and vowels, peeled them apart from their faded places next to each other. They were intermediaries, simply the hand that wielded the blade, while the true strings of execution were played by the rest of us. We were the customers, a group of Nepali women living in Beaverton. Everyone came to Kurakatne with different intentions and different financial capabilities. There were the standard reasons: revenge, jealousy, hate. There were more opaque desires too: boredom, credibility, informing without confrontation, even community, to participate in what everyone else was doing. We were a rotating cast of individuals. The numbers of our group expanded and contracted like breaths, because we were retired aunties who buoyed the money our children sent us each month, young grandmas who wanted to tattoo our eyebrows, older sisters who came and went on tourist visas, growing teenagers who inputted the names of boys our age into love calculators. The process of getting your words cleaved was a routine one for us. Step 1, walk into Kurakatne. Step 2, place an order. What do you want to say, and about who? This was an important step, because words were a weighty thing. It was something that could be held in the palms of our hands, that took up volume in our mouths, capable of ripping apart, of bringing light, of saving. Step 3, pick your price, or really your length of time. On the sliding price scale, the longer you wanted your gossip to stay relevant, the more expensive. The shorter, the cheaper. People often forgot this, that gossip is about content, but it is more about time. Time was the breath that gave gossip life, kept it alive and afloat. How many ears can it pour into? How many lips can it come from? How many lives can it disrupt? Step 4, let them cleave. We did not know what or how it happened. No one had ever seen a cleaving. No one besides the cleavers were allowed. We speculated. Some words they pulled apart like cotton candy, air like threads that untangled in their experienced hands. Others cracked open like pomegranate sliced in half, red seeds falling from its cocooned existence. Stone-hard ones too, that were near ossified, requiring a thawing out of massive proportions. And there were surely words that were translucent, capable of funneling light through the curves and hollows of its flesh, of its insides. How far could a word be stretched? We did not know. And then this is another excerpt from a short story called Lottery Winner. The first time Tiding saw his potential future wife, it was on a poster hanging in the Kirana Pasal near his house. It featured a photo of her face, a slight dimple on her left cheek, eyes that disappeared when she smiled, with large text that read, that asked, "Darna is looking for a Jivan Sathi. Could this be you?" It was hanging next to two other posters, one calling for entries for the newest season of The Singing Superstar, and the other one highlighting the current Horlicks promotion, where each purchase of a Super Saver family pack of original Horlicks came with a free mini-sized choice of Horlicks Light or Horlicks Chocolate Delight. The posters were clipped to the stretch of rope that was strung in front of the bustle, where products that came in long garlands were displayed: potato crackers, cheese balls, American-style sour cream and onion chips. The thick curtain of products rustled, twirling and dancing to the whims of the wind, their plastic shining like brightly colored stars that were always out of reach from the children who yearned to hold them. Eventually, the wind would stop blowing through Zarna's printed hair. Eventually, done serving their purpose, the posters would be pulled from their clips, twisted into cone shapes, and used to serve chutpate to teenagers wanting an afternoon snack. And eventually, too, a new poster featuring a new face would be clipped to the rope, new wind blowing through their new printed hair. The next time Turing saw his potential future wife, it was a life-size cardboard cutout of her. It was in the plaza of a multi-complex in front of a pop-up booth. It was a different image of her, slightly grainy from being blown up, but it was still there. The shy dimple on her left cheek, the disappearing eyes. A speech bubble next to her face read, "Want a chance to marry me? Enter now," while her cardboard hand pointed toward a collection box for applications. The premise of the lottery was simple: win a wife. Enter for a chance to win a wife. It was put on annually by the matchmaking company Life-Partner. It was imperative to vocalize the dash in Life-Partner, the company insisted, because they believed that life partners were joined together, two separate individuals brought together by a bridge of connection. Life-Partner also had a counterpart version, Win a Husband. They alternated the prize every year, a wife one year, a husband the next. Tradition, Life-Partner called it, nothing more than modern-day swimbars, nothing different from Arjun piercing the eye of the revolving fish. Despite the criticisms, lines of willing participants queued up, sponsors continued pouring in, and Life-Partner kept hosting lotteries year after year. The marriage business and the business of marriage endlessly lucrative. Turing stood in line with his forms. Various types of men also stood in line. The earnest, the backwards thinking, the overconfident, the baby-faced, the sour-breathed, the religious, the communist, the skinny-jeaned, the vegan, the hopeful. The state of their papers differed as much as the applicants. There were some in line, filling out their applications on the backs of each other, their pen on the verge of puncturing the paper. Some had blessings that were still drying, a red streak on their papers and a matching one on their foreheads, blessed by their local pundits to increase their chance of winning. Turing had filled out his forms with precision the night before. Turing answered. His hobby was gardening. He had no plans on leaving the country in the coming year. An item on his bucket list was seeing the ocean, and he did not identify with any religion. What he could not fit into the neatly specified boxes was that he liked the feeling of kneeling in front of an expanse of earth, knees colored by dirt as he dug into the ground, carving out space for seeds, his own version of a prayer. How he liked even more watching those seeds burst from the ground, the vined and petaled, blemished creatures that came in the form of tender tomatoes and curved eggplants, of rhododendrons that lived multiple lives, first in his mother's hair, then in the middle of the dining table, and finally as a bookmark, dried and pressed between pages. Unlike many others in his generation who were far flung in different countries, spiderweb like a fishnet over a map that sparkled with promise, Turing did not plan on leaving in the coming year or the following years after. He planned instead that just like the plants he ushered into the world with his bare hands, just like the trees he studied, that stayed rooted to the same ground for decades, that he too would like to stay where he was, growing, breathing. His only barrier was being landlocked, because while Turing had seen plenty of lakes and rivers, streams and ponds, many bodies of water, the top item on his bucket list was to stand with his feet in the sand, the thundering, glittering ocean before him. He dreamt sometimes of a horizon that was beyond the comprehension of his human eyes, unending and infinite, and be able still to feel the waves curling into each other as they rushed at his feet. And although Turing did not subscribe to any religion, he was a believer that there was something in the universe, and so he tried his best to search for the godly contours, for the divine in everyone. Thank you.
That was so good, I almost forgot. I was just sitting there like, oh wait, I have a job to do. Thank you, Sangi. That was awesome. I'm excited to introduce my online friend, who's now my in real life friend, Astra Lincoln. Astra is an essayist, cultural organizer, and ecological researcher who works at the intersection of people, power, and place. She has taught writing workshops while skiing across Alaska's biggest ice field in an assisted living facility, on helicopter access Rocky Mountain peaks, and on bike rides. Astra's writing has been recognized with 2 Banff Mountain Book Competition Awards, as well as nominations for the National Magazine Award and the Pushcart Prize. In 2024, the draft of her first book was a finalist for the Yale Nonfiction Book Prize. In addition to writing, Astra also works to negotiate and implement land-back agreements for Arctic and Indigenous communities impacted by the extraction industry. Please help me welcome Astra Lincoln.
Hi everyone.
Hello.
I am so happy to be here, in part because I've been online friends with Junae for so long. It feels like she is someone that I have a parasocial relationship with. And so tonight kind of feels like I'm meeting a celebrity. I am going to read a short section from the beginning of this book that I am writing. It's a brain injury memoir, and part of what the book is trying to pull off is kind of create conditions for the reader in which they have an experience similar to that of being inside of a brain injury. And because of that, the book is pretty unrelentingly brutal and difficult. And so in this beginning passage, I'm trying really hard to kind of create an opportunity for the reader to buy into being brutalized in that way. Unfortunately for all of you, you don't have the liberty of closing the book if you don't like it. So just cover your ears up if you want. I won't be offended. Okay, here we go. Every rupture begins as barely a sliver, a fracture you can choose to see or not. I'm sorry, I have to say something before I read the rest of this. This is in the second half of the first chapter. The really important critical information that has previously been established is that I was in a bike crash. I was hit by a car going 60 miles an hour. I just almost died. That's important for you to know for this to make sense. So every rupture begins as barely a sliver, a fracture you can choose to see or not. In my case, it is disastrously easy to look away. I did not fall from my bicycle. I did not have a shattered helmet. I could have gotten back on the saddle and ridden away. Although it is also true that right away, in the instant both women turn back towards the car, I can feel something groping towards me, something I do not dare to look at and would be terrified to name. It starts as a great yawning otherness. The crack between before and after is but a hairline. Most impacts are unnoticeable when they first occur. Before a car windshield shatters, a fine line will sometimes stretch out across the glass for months. At the beginning, the concussion felt like a punchline, demanding that I bend my life around the space that it took. I was pliant beneath it. I grew desperate for the joke to eventually land. Did I grow to love it? Did I have a choice? Stockholm Syndrome has little to do with adoration, I see now. In fact, it hinges on the victim's belief that captivity has always been their choice. All the captor must do is build conditions under which it feels obvious that it was the victim and not the captor who had originally constructed the trap. The captor must leave the victim captivated. You might wonder what renders a brain injury patient so inexplicably enthralled. Imagine two train tracks running side by side. One track is built out of the neural networks you relied on your whole life. Now imagine a disaster. Let's say a bridge has collapsed. Now the train can't cross the water using its familiar rails. It fumbles, stutters, jumps slightly to the right, plowed on by velocity, by the demands of life. Even injured, you still sometimes have to make a sandwich, wash the dishes, place a call. The train has arrived at the canyon, is always arriving. Hurry, quick, it is time for action, throw down a line. But the new train track is piecemeal, cobbled together badly, none of the ballast joints quite right. You carry onward anyway. The old track remains beside you, but you can't see it. You can't remember what it feels like to run on smoothly welded steel. This is what a brain injury feels like. There is no stable point of perception. There was no way for me to get off the ride and look around. As soon as the trauma occurred, its interior was all I knew. Did the rupture begin in the moment of the crash, or sometimes later, when I realized I had derailed? Or even earlier, when I had boarded the train, when I first imagined myself as a passenger? Regardless of origin, something was happening to me, something overwhelming, something I was terrified to name. One could say it feels just like falling, as though having jumped from a high ledge. The second after impact, when your body meets the stiff resistance of the world, lights and plasticky colors, but also the agony of knowing that you are about to burst into tears on a bus. It is like the memory of your child body accidentally curled around the leg of a grocery store stranger you believe to be a loved one. The moment you realize your mistake, that feeling, yes, but all the time, and too big feeling for your much bigger grown-up body. That distinct embarrassment, no longer situational, now it's threaded through each of your days. As though at any moment you might awaken from a dream and realize that the last decade of your life has never happened, that everything you knew about being a member of the species is wrong. The certainty that everyone you love remains a stranger, the eerie awareness that psychosis is always a possible outcome, plus the unspoken element of grief, that now you feel unsafe in every room you enter. Underlying all of this, there's also a hopped-up sensation that underscores the unending pain that gives birth to the soft animal living inside of you. And look, it is baring its teeth. And now you are only instinct and impulse. And your instincts are not very good. Instinct doesn't give a shit about goodness or kindness or care. All of this, eclipsing the better parts of being human you've spent the last 3 decades becoming an expert in. It was easier to avert my gaze than it was to look all of this in the eye. I was in an accident, I would say in the weeks immediately after, looking coquettishly at the floor, giggling at the end of the sentence, haha, isn't that funny? Isn't it funny that that happened? And I'm totally fine, I'd say, lying to whomever, begging them with my cocked eyebrow to believe it, to lie back, to agree that I seemed fine. I could engage with the undeniable drama of the accident as a story. It was, I believed, a story about proximity. Look at how close I've come. Can you believe my luck, etc. Something about it was thrilling. I felt at last like I was the center of all of life's action. In hindsight, I see the irony of my initial understanding that it was something that made me a protagonist, when in fact it was the inverse that eventually came to feel true. How could I have known that the impact would hollow out every room in my life for the rest of my life? It was an ordinary accident. I did not think that it would keep me from having an ordinary life. I did not expect that most mornings for the following 5+ years I would wake startled, out of breath, thinking, where am I? Or, oh my God, that feeling in my skull hurts so fucking much. I cannot be awake through this. Please, God, make it stop. Let me fall back asleep. I am begging you, please. That instead of getting better, I would steadily get worse. It was an ordinary accident. I was 27 and had what felt like superhuman fitness. Of course I would be able to sleep it off. And I was 27. I had not yet learned how to admit when I was wrong. Is anyone sensitive to really gory descriptions of animal brutality? Okay, I don't mean it. And you can tune this part out. Like the rest of the part. In the West, we imagine the brain to be the house of the soul, the personality, one's entire sense of self. It is the site through which we are tethered to everything outside of us by way of our eyes, ears, nose, spinal cord. But the brain is not a sturdy organ. In fact, mammal brains are half-set jello soft. In an autopsy video that you can watch on YouTube, the bloody flesh separates like spaghetti and drips between the splayed fingers of the mortician's blue-rubbered hands. The liquid mess of the brain is held in place by a fluid barrier that insulates the wiggling fat from the hard bone of the skull. When a sudden jerking movement flicks the body like a bobblehead, the brain can sometimes breach the fluid barrier, smacking into the skull again and again as it ricochets. This type of injury is called a coup contre coup in medicalese. First, one innocent hit, then damage that blooms during secondary reverberations. As the fluid sloshes to one side, the brain tissue stretches, tearing tiny fibers in the meat, nerves frayed up like the top of a deck of cards mid-shuffle. Resulting damage to one's cognitive abilities can be immediate or progressive. So much for our skeleton, skulls, and sinews. We remain fragile animals. Commotions outside of us are wont to end up trapped in our insides. But whether or not a concussion is real is still effectively a matter of opinion. They are almost impossible to definitively diagnose. There is, of course, the self-selection of whether or not you even make it to the inside of an examination room. Even then, not every traumatic brain injury is sent in for imaging. And even when a patient's brain is imaged, there is no FDA-approved technology good enough to capture the tearing that occurs after a mild brain injury, wherein a patient is concussed in the absence of any major brain bleeds. In these instances, the tears are submicroscopic. They are impossible to see. But we want to see them, to be able to precisely locate a concussion's coordinates, to understand the exact moment that damage begins. In a research study from 1966, scientists fitted monkeys with collars that prevented their necks from twisting or bending, and then proceeded to hit the little mammals repeatedly over the heads. Some of the monkeys were injured, but even having incurred repeated occipital blows, many of the monkeys sustained no cerebral injuries. A second set of monkeys in the same study were not outfitted with collars and were not hit in the head. Instead, these monkeys, with the freely waggling necks, were vigorously shaken. They all sustained concussion-like injuries. The shaking had left their brains tattered and riddled with holes. The animal trial confirmed what had been apparent since concussions were first described in the ancient Greek medical compendium, the Hippocratic Corpus, which described the loss of speech, hearing, and sight as a commotio cerebri. Whether or not there is a direct blow to the head is irrelevant to the subsequent intensity of the commotion in the brain. Years later, footage was leaked from a similar animal whiplash trial. The footage shows a badly sedated, but not anesthetized, baboon, strapped onto a table, a helmet glued to its head. A hydraulic device slams into the side of the baboon's head, meant to stimulate the conditions of a high-speed automotive crash and induce whiplash. I wonder what happened to the monkeys at the experiment's end. Were they tended to in their stupor, led to soft, dark rooms and permitted silence and rest? But no, of course, it should be no surprise to learn that the aim of the study was to see what happened to the untreated monkeys. An expose film made by PETA using research footage ends when a researcher, cigarette lolling from the side of his cocked grin, rips the helmet from the baboon's head, tearing a chunk of ear off as he does. The camera centers on the monkey, blood already beginning to clump his silvery fur. I wonder, is the monkey looking away from the camera? Or is it just that at some point I learned to want sufferers to turn bashfully away from my gaze? Do we owe each other modesty, restraint? Why do I so often want to look but not be caught looking? Is it only rubbernecking if the injured party never asked for a witness? I don't mean to invoke the animal's helplessness, to remove him from the possibility of having a first-person experience of the study. What I want for the monkey is that he may experience distrust and betrayal. I want him to look into the camera, searching for a compassionate witness. I want him to be well enough to want anything at all. Don't be shy now, sir, an off-camera researcher says to the monkey in the moment before the film ends. There's nothing to be afraid of. Did I sustain a concussion from my accident? Yes. No. Maybe. Even now, mired in a simulacrum of the symptoms that began all those years ago, I have trouble understanding what that means. I did not believe the accident was serious. I did not believe I had sustained a trauma. I did not believe that my concussion would last for longer than a single week. Okay. There's a video I have on my phone that I have by now watched several hundred times. I recorded it on the evening of the accident. While I speak, my eyes flit from side to side in my hesitancy to make eye contact with the camera. But I'm smiling. I look up at the ceiling more than at the ground, as though I'm on the verge of rolling my eyes, which lends the tick of flirtatiousness. Do I look concussed? Absolutely not. To the contrary, I think I look distinctly hotter than usual. Watching it, I am struck by how young I look. Well-rested, deeply tanned, my speech is measured, lilting, funny in a subtle way. There is something open in my expression that I never see in photos of myself today. No matter how many times I study the video, I can't find a glimmer of unease. I do not look like someone who has just sustained a major trauma. At the end of the video, I finally lock eyes with the watcher, and I look completely unafraid. Yet in the weeks after the accident, I yearned for bruises. It was a perverse longing for some sort of talisman, like a hickey I could worship in private. Proof that it had happened, to assuage my consideration that possibly it had not, that I had only been afraid, and that the thing inside of me still is just fear that has failed to settle, like the remnants of a hurricane that's broken apart but hasn't quite stopped pouring yet. Just a minor commotion. In the weeks after it happened, she says, who am I kidding? I'm still obsessively looking for clues. I want proof of this rupture that I can wear like a tag, something to hold in both hands and lift up right under your nose where you can't miss it. My little accident, my little shattered life, trapped like a lightning bug. I will gently peel apart my fingers to let you in on the secret, as though to say, look, this is what happened. Here it is. Can't you see it too? Thank you.
Wow, thank you. Now I was the one who was like, oh, kind of stunned in silence. Amazing. I am so happy to have Jenny Chi here at Constellation. Jenny is my friend from Tin House, and I'll read Jenny's bio and then I'll tell the personal stuff quickly. Jenny Chi is the author of Focal Point, which is here tonight, winner of the 2020 Steel Toe Books Poetry Award. Her essays and poems have appeared in the New York Times, The Atlantic, Poetry Northwest, San Francisco's Asian Art Museum, and elsewhere. She's been supported by organizations such as Tin House, the San Francisco Foundation, the California Center for Cultural Innovation, and the Crested Butte Center for the Arts. She's working on a hybrid collection titled Liminal Bodies, and a memoir and essays and conversation with her late mother's memoirs of the Cultural Revolution and life in Las Vegas. She holds a BA from Vanderbilt University and a PhD in biomedical science from UCSF. I love Jenny's poetry so much, and I kind of want to tell you why, but also I just want you to hear it. I will say that one of Jenny's poems I open my poetry class with, I have for years now, and Anna's like, yes, yeah, I know. And Jenny's just such a precise writer, but also there's lots of feeling there. One of my students, I think, asked how Jenny balances the analytical with the emotional, and I said, like a boss. And that is true. Welcome, Jenny G.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Thank you all for being here. And thank you, Julie. I should have your number right now.
Over here.
Okay.
Allergies, and I just have like a copy for everybody.
Okay. I hope you're okay. It's an honor to be here and such a pleasure. This is my first time back since 2020 when we did Tin House right before COVID. So yeah, I'm delighted to be here. I'm going to read poems to round out the genres. I'm going to read 2 poems from Focal Point, and then I'm going to read some newer work from my manuscript in progress. And I feel like I have to start with the poem that Jessica and Anna were their classes with. So, thank you. Postcards from the Living. I light incense on the stovetop, trail cinders through an empty house. I've decided to believe in the power of ashes. Here I am, buying fruit, mending torn shirts, brushing teeth in cramped bathrooms, living someplace new. Wish you were here. I sprinkle sandalwood dust on the ribbon from my first 5K, the token from my first solo trip. Milestones so small and unremarkable, only you could understand and be proud. Remember world history class, how I translated lectures to you each night, partly to practice, partly to keep you with me. Every day, there's so much new I want to show you, like the spongy tang of injera, pork belly banh mi melting like butter on the tongue. All these places I have traveled without you, so I can forget how without you I am. Remember when I was 10 and hateful, trying too hard to be cool. How in a rare moment, you said all you wanted was for me to love my life, my only life, this life you started. Here, look how the clouds blush so fiercely, the stark blue winter, so cold and bright. I guess I should have said this before I started reading that poem, but this book I mostly wrote during grad school, during my PhD for biomedical science, and my mom died when I was 19, and then I started grad school 6 months later, and then I wrote most of these poems during that period. So there are a lot of science poems in here, and I promise there are some funny poems too, but I am not reading those because I'm working on new shit and I want to read my new shit. But I've been writing a lot about the desert and Las Vegas. I just moved back about a year ago, and so I'm going to read one of my desert poems from this book before I transition into the new stuff. This is What We Grew in the Desert. My mother wanted flowers, fragrant and lovely, so she flooded young seeds until they boiled in midday heat. And when they didn't bloom, she thought she could will blossoms with sullen silence. My father wanted fruit trees, hardy and useful, so he baked saplings in the sun until they brittled into sand. And when they didn't ripen, he thought he could shout them into submission. At night, I snuck into the garden and sang my pleas into the leaves. Still, the gardenia blackened and scorched. The jasmine shot its stars into the ground. The peaches puckered around unformed pits. In the end, all we grew was oleander. Pink flesh burst from clay, blowing sweet poison to the wind. Okay, so to be honest, it was a little bit of a game time decision which poems I would read from the new stuff. And I think in part because we started with that exercise and because we were all thinking so much about trauma. I think about trauma a lot, just even without that, without the rest of the world, but now I'm thinking like about all of the layers of trauma around the entire world. And so here is a long poem that I don't normally read because it's long. Flagellum. This morning I wrote in my journal, why is it so hard for me to let go of regret and self-flagellation? Flagellate, verb, whip, scourge, to drive or punish as if by whipping. My parents never whipped me as a child, though I'm sure my father wanted to. He slapped me once after I learned to talk back, sometime after I told my teacher kids were bullying me, and she said not to be a tattletale. Sometime before I told my teacher I didn't want to write I love you because I didn't think he liked me. After, I threatened to report him. After this, he left me to my mother. He didn't know how to handle this child grown unruly, no longer the malleable, sexless infant whose head, indented from the clamps at birth, could be molded back into shape. Shaping this angry female child would be the woman's work. So for the next 12 years, he spoke to her through the woman until the woman died. Oh, he always kept the child fed, checked her math, and always reprimanded her careless errors. Her mother was too easy on her, spoiled her, and if they did not punish this child, she would not be prepared for the harshness of the world. Flagellate, adjective, having flagella, plural noun of flagellum, a long tapering process that projects from a cell and is the primary organ of motion, from the Latin flagellum, or whip, for its lash-like motion. Consider a sperm cell under a microscope. Like a tadpole, its flagellum tail whips to and fro to drive it forward through the medium. The stakes are high. It is in competition with all the others in a zero-sum game, where survival is determined by the rate of self-flagellation. The most effective flagellum whips itself faster, drives the cell harder to reach the egg before the others. Human birth originates in scarcity, projected from the cell as it divides into the multitudes that comprise human life, a long tapering process of flagellation. How to reconcile that harshness and scarcity were my birthright, projected from the cell that was my father, a cell altered epigenetically by trauma. The deep lacerations of war, a labor camp, unsolved death of a sister, daily hurts from a parent, strangers, crossing an ocean with $400 hidden in a sweaty pocket, scarcity as death by 1,000 paper cuts. I once said, "Don't you see how our relationship resembles your relationship with your mother?" He could not call her without erupting, even in her last days. He said, "Nonsense, I treat you so much better than your grandmother treated me." The grandmother, who was a young bride, as Japanese soldiers processed through neighboring Nanjing, slicing women's bellies open and waving their dead babes in the air on long tapering swords and bayonets. 2 generations dead at once were witness to a scourge of depravity the mind should not even conceive. What is encoded in every cell I've inherited? Instructions on how to survive in a world where cruelty is the default. If trauma begets trauma, can trauma grow exponentially like bacteria in a dish without limitations? A classic ecology example. Imagine a bacterium that doubles every 20 minutes. After one day, bacteria form a layer large enough to blanket the whole world. Each bacterium with its own flagellum, spiraling into its limitless future. Now replace bacterium with trauma. The whole world blanketed in traumas, several layers deep. Say trauma enough times, it loses meaning, ties the tongue in knots, tangling until you choke on silence. Thank you. I'm going to end on 2 shorter and lighter poems. Here is another one about Las Vegas. I've been writing more about that. Jessica's heard this one.
Good.
This is Cockroach. Warning, I'm going to swear and language warning. Right. Cockroach. At 9, I went to a school in a rough neighborhood in Las Vegas. It was called Paradise. My first day, a 7-year-old said, "Fuck you, Ching Chong bitch." You can tell a rough neighborhood in Las Vegas by people walking. No one walks in the heat unless they have to. You can tell by how run down and low to the ground houses are, like they're embarrassed to be there too. The windows have bars like prison cells. The low cell houses sit beside apartments that look like roach motels. I lived in one, and it was the first time I saw a cockroach. A big, brown, shining thing scuttling across yellowed linoleum. Not cute like the kids' sheet music for La Cucaracha would have you believe. A college professor studied cockroach intelligence. What an aggro word, cockroach. A man must have coined it. As if it's not bad enough, he wants me barefoot in the kitchen. He sends a cockroach my way like a dirty martini. My father once said I should learn to cook because I was a girl. Now all I make are smoothies sweetened with honey. Maybe if Kafka had been a woman, he would have turned into a bee and flown far away.
That's so great.
Thank you. Okay, I will end with one more that ventures into the speculative to reimagine hard lives as something better. This is Sunday morning in Heshiyan. Beneath the stone arch, Graying women dance in unison. They sway their hips, step right, flutter arms outward like butterfly wings, hands cupped skyward as if to receive a benediction. The woman in the center, the tall one, wears a red sweater, white cropped pants, butter yellow visor tied with a ribbon over short permed curls. Above her, carved in stone, Hushian, peace, joy, garden. For a moment, I am winded. Back turned, they look like an idea I once had of my mother. She wears something like this in a photo from long ago, in another city, by another sea that wouldn't be home. In the photo, she is younger than me, still new to this country. I am nowhere, stardust yet to settle. In the photo, she sits on a pier, right leg crossed over the other. She smiles wide, left of the camera, eyes crinkled behind plastic sunglasses. In the photo, her world is cracked open like an oyster shell. This woman might one day live by the sea, slurp an oyster's sweet brine, watch the sun rise over ocean waves like a golden pearl, watch her child grow up, grow old. In the photo, the future lives next to the modal verb might. In the future, imagination exists in the perfect tense. I imagine she will have lived in peace and joy. In a perfect future, I imagine her present continuous, picking ripe loquats in a garden, dancing beneath a stone arch.
The goosebumps are bumping. There are copies of Focal Point for sale and a whole bookstore full of books that are you good to sell? Jude can bend for you. If you are up for it, we have a whole spread and wine, beer, seltzer. Come hang out. If this is your first time at Constellation, we hope you come back. Thank you so much for being here and for listening. And again, next month on the 26th, we have Wayne Bund, who is here. And Anthony Hudson and Jane Marchant. It'll be good.
Really good.